Okay, so we have the recording going. We have the PowerPoint presentation up. I wonder what it'll do if I do slideshow. If I do slideshow, we stop sharing. It popped up on the other screen. Share screen. PowerPoint presentation. Share.
There we go.
That, oh crap. All right. My screen's gone crazy. What it does is it pixelates because it's a TV, not an actual monitor. So sometimes the signal gets all messed up. And that's why it looks like an old pixel. All right. So let's share the screen, but I'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Might as well do that. This one will be cleaner. All right. Can I stop this thing? All right. So yeah, so let's just go through. So this is us. We work good as a team. We bring a lot of experience, so 30 years of experience for me in data integration, and then you have the 18 years of management. I think that's great. Owning your own, we both own our own corporations. You have 8 of them, actually.
Yep.
Yeah. So
8
this is,
keeps me busy, that's for sure.
it does for sure. Yeah. So this was quite the journey. I mean, when we started out talking about this, we were trying to figure out how much it would cost. We were trying to line up who would be available to do it. And we went through a few people. Well, I mean, you did. I mean, you interviewed quite a few people trying to figure out best cost, best people to do the work. So yeah, how challenging was that on your side?
Well, finding quality construction people these days is definitely becoming a greater challenge. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it was it just kind of things kind of aligned up that I ended up connecting with a new contractor that was had the same principles and values that we share, that they want to do good work and make an honest buck, but they're not looking to just inflate numbers. And we had, when we saw his quotes, definitely realized that some of the other quotations we had gotten were way more inflated than they should have been. But it turned out good. Like the deck price was significantly better than any of the other quotes we had. And we ended up adding that new bedroom for better pricing again than the original quotes. And so it was a good experience because it also allowed me to be able to sort through some not so good contractors to end up finding some great people to work with for future projects.
Yeah, and I mean, at first it was a little bit slow in getting going, but once we got into a rhythm, I think it really worked well. The ability that the amount of time we communicated with each other, came
Yep.
up with some ideas. We had one idea where we didn't do the closets, right, for this new bedroom.
Yep.
It was easier and more cost effective to actually not do closets and do just two rectangular
Yep.
boxes, which is the two
Yep.
bedrooms, and we just put wardrobes in there.
Exactly. And it's also great for the tenant because now they can, if they want to, they can move it around the room and maybe set it up the way it better suits for them. So it's a win-win-win because it saves some money, and it gives them that autonomy to kind of make the space their own. That's the one thing I think that really made this project was, and then every project I've done before and after as well, like you've got to be flexible, because until you start doing stuff, you're not going to know what, you can plan for as many hiccups as possible, but you've got to be ready to work on the fly of, hey, this came up, what do you want to do? Or that came up, so let's pivot to this, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, definitely. We started off with, all we need to do is remove the oil furnace. Famous last words, right?
yeah,
And removing the oil furnace was actually so cheap. But then,
yeah,
everything else, right? That goes after you remove it. What do you do? Right. But
exactly,
I mean, in fair play, we did identify some issues that we wanted to address while we had the building, the 3 units empty. If the hardwood floors had been in pristine condition, we wouldn't have had to do those.
exactly.
We would have had to do paint and patch, but when you get new tenants, you're going to do that anyway.
Yeah, especially most of those tenants had been there for a period, the spaces needed a refresh, and you inherited, I think, all three tenants
I did.
on the purchase. So who knows when the last time they had been painted before that, and the color scheme was less than attractive. So us being able to make it look more modern, much more brighter. The flooring, really complemented the color scheme. I think it gave people a real sense of pride to move in, because the space was just so, even though we didn't do like hardcore renos, the space was very modern and enjoyable to live in.
Yeah, definitely. And that's always my goal. And I know that's your goal, where, we both own properties and we both want to provide quality, but not over the top quality. We're doing granite countertops and, marble floors and, stuff like that. But, it was a good learning experience. I like the way we actually came around to what we were going to do on the electrical side, because there was challenges there, right? There's the hot water baseboard. When you have an oil water-based system, they don't swap out one to one, right? So we had to remove the baseboards. We weren't going to at first. If you recall, we were going to just leave
Yep,
them there because we figured, well, if we pull them out, there's going to be a whole mess behind there and it's going to be very bad. It
yep,
turned out that we tried one. We tried to remove one, and look, there was just one hole and everything else was pristine. I was like,
yep,
hey, this is fantastic. But then we started thinking about, well, what about the wiring of the building, right?
yep,
At first, even the electrician was like, yeah, you're going to have to run this wire, you're going to have to tear apart these walls and everything. And then, through discussions, he came around and said, well, you know what? We can run conduits on the outside through PVC, right?
exactly. And then we also lucked out because of the fact that we were already putting in the new bedroom in the basement. We were actually able to use that open space to, instead of us having to conduit the entire building, we actually were able to run the entire left side. Well, if you're looking at the building, the entire right side of the building up from that new space up through the walls, only having to cut 3-4 inch holes, and we were able to rewire that whole side of the house, and then the conduit still turned out really good, very sharp. It's not intrusive or doesn't make the outside look bad, and being able to take the electrical from around the outside of the house and then bring it back in to get those baseboards. It saved us from cutting, a lot of intrusive holes. Like, I'm working on a project right now that we don't have that luxury. We're actually replacing knob and tube, and we're doing the electric baseboard, converting it over to electric baseboard heat at the same time. And like, I'm just like, I wish we could be back at 38 McLaughlin, because we are literally destroying the units, having to do rewiring, because you have no choice when you're changing out every light fixture and every socket. So with 38 McLaughlin, we were lucky that all the wiring was still viable for the actual units. We just had to run new wiring for the heating and then pull it all back to the new panels that we put into the electrical room, and then just sort, right? So we had 2 panels for 3 units. So we sorted all of the wiring for the top floor into one panel and the middle floor into another panel and the basement into another. And it just, again, it was a lot smoother than I think anybody anticipated.
Mhm.
Um, we were able to actually add the full rewiring of the third bedroom and add the new light fixtures and things like that for 38 McLaughlin. And we stayed in the original budget for the electrical with all of that extra stuff. So that just further amplifies the fact that that project ended up being from an electrical perspective and of the conversion, it ended up being a lot smoother than I think any of us thought of. The surprises, if you will, or the unplanned for was, when the tenants left, those floors were pretty brutal. So having to replace, we put LVP, beautiful LVP down with new baseboards. But the place is good for another, 8, 10, 15 years. So it was a good experience. It was and then the beautiful thing is that your rents are way better than they ever were,
Yeah, well,
right?
that's what we always strive for, right? Once you do renovations, you try to increase income and reduce expenses, right? And we achieved that in spades.
Yep.
I think one point I'd like to bring up is just the relationship between the electrician, yourself, and myself, and how we worked well together. Because if it had been some electricians, um, they would have be looking at dollar signs. Oh no, you got to do the walls and all this stuff. But this particular electrician was like, I think he'd just call you and say, "Yeah, I have an idea," or you guys were discussing. I remember there's something that went that way.
Well, it was kind of a joint thought process between he and I that I was like, okay, like I cannot cut open this entire building to run these. So how do we make this work? And then, you know, he was like, well, we could go out, we could take it outside, and we can bring it around the building in conduit. And kind of, I think, honestly, at the first, kind of joking, because he was like, no one's going to want to spend the money on conduit. But the reality of it is even if we had to conduit the entire house to pull all the electrical heat out of the panels and then all around and put them back in to run the electric baseboard heat, it still would have been cheaper than if we had originally planned to, if we had to cut holes or like major holes and things like that to pull wire. So it actually ended up being a pretty ingenious idea. Even though I honestly think at the beginning he was kind of joking that, hey, let's just run conduit around the outside of the house. So um, it worked, right? It doesn't look too industrial because it's still a triplex. You don't want it to look too industrial, but
Yep.
it's functional. It also gives you the opportunity that if for some reason down the road that we wanted to do laundry centers in the bathrooms, things like that, we now know that we can use the conduit method instead of, again, ripping apart half the building trying to run a dryer cable to the third floor, right? So it just, again, thinking outside of the box, having contractors that are thinking more about how do I make this project more efficient for the person that has hired me instead of how do I make more money. And at the end of the day, it's, he knows now that I have the confidence in him for future jobs, so he's going to get more referrals, and he's still put food on the table for his family, and he knows he's got two very happy customers. So
Absolutely. So we have the pictures of the hardwood floors. You can see that I mean, they have a little bit of shine at spots, but you can tell that they actually need to be refinished. So let's touch on that. Why we went with LVP versus just refinishing the hardwood floors.
so first of all, finding someone to actually do the hardwood floors proved very challenging. We ultimately did find somebody that was willing to quote on it, but we would have had to shut down every unit for a week. And it's not like he can work on. He wasn't going to be willing to work on, and we only had to do it in two of the units, but he wasn't going to work on the 2 units at the same time. It was, he's going to go in, he's going to sand, we're going to rip off all the baseboards we had to rip off anyway, to put down the luxury vinyl plank, and then he's going to finish the flooring, and then at the end of the day, you're still going to have a floor that can be probably damaged by a tenant long term. Versus, we're already taking the baseboards off. We put luxury vinyl plank in. We were actually able to cover some of the deficiencies in the floors, like right in front of the old uh, fireplace. We would have had to do a whole lot of fixing if we had just done hardwood floor repair. And then same thing in the basement. The basement had already been done in LVP previously. So adding LVP over the very cheaply laid laminate that we had in a couple of the rooms, again, it just brought the whole value of that unit up. We went from a unit that we were getting, I think, $1,000 for.
Yep.
We made it a 3-bedroom, and now it's a $1,600 a month rental. And by the time we have the next changeover, it'll be worth even more than that. But it 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 added so much value having those 2 extra rooms done. And then same thing on the 2 units that had hardwood floors. Like, people walked in and went, wow, like it looks so sharp and modern, instead of, very damaged hardwood floors. We probably could have gotten it, but I think we would have gotten less rent than we did if we hadn't done something with the flooring.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in the pictures here, you see the deck, right? I mean, the deck, the story with the deck was quite interesting. When I had not the appraisal, but the inspection done when I first bought the property in 2021, it was done in the fall, and they said that the deck needed some love. Okay, fair enough. I had another property manager that and I get a call saying that the tenant's complaining that there's a couple of boards that need to be replaced. I was like, all right, a couple of boards need to be replaced. That's not a problem, right? Well, as we know, like, I went up last year and looking at the deck going, a couple of boards, are you kidding me? This thing's a tear down. So let's talk about that project. And you mentioned it earlier about how we found somebody who was starting off. They're hungry, they're not they're fair. And what ended up happening to that person, just because they priced it properly.
Yeah, so when we walked that, what was it? It was actually August of 2022. So,
Yeah.
you know, the tenant that was living in the basement at the time had covered the hole where she usually sat with Matt, because I think, if I remember correctly, she had actually fallen through the deck. And then, there was like 5 or 6 boards that had been replaced when the whole deck clearly was unsafe. And, that was kind of like, how do you do that to an owner? Like, and that's a huge part of why I started my own property management company, is exactly that scenario. But, we went out and we said, okay, everybody, we're shutting down the deck. We also had to take off the upper deck. It wasn't safe. And, we had that conversation with people about the fact that we had to shut it down. And the original quote, I think, to remove and replace the deck was something like $28,000 or something
Yeah,
for
somewhere
just the
around
back.
there. Yeah.
For just the back. It wasn't even what we did. We ultimately ended up doing with the front. And again, it didn't sit well with me. And I was working with that contractor on other projects at the time, and I was kind of like, this doesn't make sense. So, I kept looking and kept going, and the guy that we ultimately found to clear out all the brush on the hill and behind, ultimately said, "Hey, you know what? I can do that for." And I think it was more than half off compared to
Yeah.
what we were going to be charged to just demo the deck. And he hauled it away, and at the end of the day, we locked the back off for the winter. And then this spring we started getting quotes to replace it, and I think the highest one we had was 36,000 with the front, because we also had to fix the front steps. And the contractor we ended up settling on, who also ended up being the guy that did the new room in the basement, who also ended up being the guy that did the painting, and and a lot of a great work on the property. You know, he came in at like a fraction of what the next closest quote was. So it was, he did great work. He delivered it on time, and you know, ultimately at the end of the day, you know, saved a lot of money for the budget.
Absolutely. And he got business from one of the house owners across the street. He saw the
Actually, I think
product.
he actually built two decks for people on on the street just from the workmanship that he did on this building. So, you know, it was a win-win-win again, and that's the best way to do business, right? Everybody needs to win in the equation, because then it just, not only does everybody, you know, leave going, hey, that was a great relationship for that project, but everybody eats, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just gonna see if I can bring this up here. Here we go. So yeah, so this is what we've been talking about is, and I've shared this on my Facebook page, and I've sent it to a few people. When my son saw
I
this,
don't think it's
Anson,
showing, Ken.
eh,
I don't think it's showing because I don't see anything.
oh, you don't see it? Okay, hang on. Let me stop. Let me stop the share. Um, this is here. And let's start sharing the screen again. Where is it? There it is. Is it there now?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, sometimes it glitches. It's Zoom. Yeah, so I showed this to my son, and he was like, "Dad, can I move in there?" I was like, "Well, you have to move to St. John." He's like, "Yeah." So yeah, so there, you know, there's the hardwood. That's LVP. You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
And it's and when you picked brown, honestly, I was just like, oh my Lord, this is gonna look so bad. But you know what? That brown really complemented the gray that we chose for the walls. And then all that brand new semi-gloss trim, and the window frames were done, the doors were done. It really tied it all together, and it also fixed the fireplace hole as well.
yeah, absolutely. Let's swing over to the fireplace here. So there you go, right? I mean, we ran the LVP ran into the hole, and now it's just covered,
Yep.
right? So it's an ornament now,
Yep.
right?
And because we pulled out the furnace, we've also insulated all of those areas in behind there so that there isn't a draft and stuff. And then if you turn to the right, again, this is kind of where this is the top floor unit. We were
Yep.
able to actually pull the wire from the basement from the new room all the way up to there. And then if you go back over to the left, we actually made the decision, instead of running a full length, keep going all the way around,
Oh, you want to see the air
the
thing?
blower one. Yeah. So if
There
you
it
pop
is.
over there, so instead of putting a big honking baseboard heater over on the wall, which would then cause that in a, you know, dining area, or maybe they turn it into an office space, having this big, you know, electric baseboard heat in the way, for very, you know, I think it was like an extra $50. We put in that blower heater, and now, since we've done this, we've actually put the heat. I don't, was the heat pump in that photo, but the heat pump will actually, yeah, it's right there. The heat pump will give people, probably will, even though it's meant to be the secondary source, will give them a lot of their heat for the winter, air conditioning in the summer. There's a good chance that those two heaters in that space will never get turned on. So
Yeah,
again, it became a win-win-win for you as an owner, for me as a property manager, project manager, and then the tenant wins as well, because they're paying the electricity on the ultimately for that unit, that they've got functional heat, functional air conditioning. But if they need that additional heat, they've got all kinds of it without it tying up a big bulky electrical baseboard on the wall.
absolutely. You know, and that's what we offloaded by going to off the oil, right? So now I, as the owner, don't have an oil bill anymore. I also don't
Yep.
have an electric bill anymore. I have a small
Yep.
one because I'm renting the heat pumps, And I have the hot water
Yes.
tank rental, and there's a little bit of electricity for those. Well, not the heat pump, but for the hot water tank. So there's a common area that I pay a little bit, but offloading that amount, I think I paid, it was like $6,000 or $7,000 in electricity and oil last year on this property. Works out to, what was it? 203. No, it was it's about 550, I think it was. It worked out to, right? That's what it worked out to, 550 or something like that per month.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I think I'm paying 174. Actually, I know I'm paying 174.
Yep.
So I'd like to point out too about
And
we talked.
and also, Ken, the fact that you put the heat pump in allowed us to also get the rent we got up on that top floor and the middle floor, because if they were living in the heat that we sometimes get and we've had a lot of very warm days this summer. Just having the air conditioning allowed us to be able to get, like, I would say, if we hadn't had the heat pump, probably 100, maybe even more, less, maybe even more of a discount than what we got. So heat pumps in our market are, they help the tenant, but they also help us get better rents, right?
Absolutely. We talked about this before. What do our properties offer that the other properties do not, right? So 38 McLaughlin specifically, now we have a heat pump for air conditioning. We have parking. We have laundry facility. What else was there? I thought there was four things that if you do a search on St. John itself for apartments, some will have two, but none of them will have all of them.
Yep. And being in property management, I have a lot of other properties I look after, and trust me, the difference in rents that we can get from having parking, having air conditioning, and a heat pump for the winter, especially if they're responsible for the electricity bill, um, is and then laundry. Those are the three biggest things I find that of where I can be able to help an owner level up the rent that they can collect for their property.
Mhm.
If people have an off-street parking, if they have the ability to have air conditioning and heat, and have a dedicated laundry center, that it just, you get people that are like, I want those amenities all the
Yeah.
time.
And here's another thing we added. I'm just circling it. As the modern touch, we put in USB plugs, right? So you can plug in your
Yes.
USB A and USB C, and you have the regular plugs. I have them in my house, and these are great because everybody's looking to plug in their USB, right? So
Yep.
now, fortunately for us, the kitchens, we didn't need to touch. This was the previous owner that had put these kitchens in. We did replace some appliances. There's another blower on the inside, right here, right? So, oh, by the
Yep.
way, I know you're seeing this. That's been fixed. So that's an old
Yep.
picture. Okay, so this is the unit. We're running out of time here. So yeah, you can see that, in this bedroom, there's the baseboard, and it should have a plug. There it is. Each bedroom has a plug, and there's one in the common area. But
Yep.
you can see what this looks like. All right. So let's go back to the slide. Do you see the slide here?
Nope.
No? Okay.
You'll probably have to yeah.
Yeah. Share screen slide. All right. So we'll go by the numbers here. Do you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So what it worked out to, I mean, don't forget we had a deck, we had a lot of extra stuff that if I were to do my other property and I don't need to replace a deck, well, but a deck, all the electricity, rewiring, the hardwood floors, the hours, the labor and the materials for painting and patching and everything like that worked out to about $28,000 per unit, or a total of $84,000, and
Yep.
that's kind of normal these days, it seems, unless things start coming down. So the big cost, like I said, the removal of the oil system was peanuts compared to the rest of it, but we do benefit from it, right? We reap the
Yep.
rewards of going that extra mile. So the new deck, 13.8, like we said, that was super good price. Flooring came out to 10, paint came out to almost 10. The new third bedroom unit itself was about 5,500. That's just for that bedroom. The electrical came on right on, bang on budget. Attic insulation. Oh yeah, we added attic insulation. And when we did the attic insulation, the inspection was the attic was barely insulated, like it was just barely above the rafters, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what it does is 12 times increased in yearly cash flow. My operating expenses dropped to 49.5 from 72%. That's significant. Increased my yearly net operating income by 2.5 times, and increased the value of the price. Now, if the property was not in my name and it was in a corporation, the valuation would be the numbers that you see here. We got it appraised at 375. It's in my name, but the idea is we're going to put it in a corporation. It's going to increase the valuation, right? So this is what we're looking at. Look at the cash flow per month. Like the cash flow per month before we started the renovations was like, I don't know, $50 or something. It wasn't a lot, and now look at it, right? So before we leave you, just want to talk about some words of advice. Be clear and upfront on your expected costs. There were some things that I think we left a little late in when we were doing the budgeting that had
Yep.
me scrambling for money, and it put stress on both of us. No word of a
Definitely.
lie. So now, I've learned, okay, we can do this differently. Now we've also learned, because now we have our team, right? We have an electrician, we have a
Yep.
carpenter slash drywall guy slash whatever, right? We have the team in place, and now we know the next project, we know what to do. We put in LED, we put in
Exactly.
all kinds of stuff. Now, the interesting thing is, because of that, we're able to do some things to the property next door, which is 36. Wasn't able to remove the oil yet, but we are able to put in heat pumps. We are able to put in LED. We increase the safety by putting in motion detecting lights in the common area. We have sunset, sundown lights on the outside for both properties. So we tackled both things. So some of that cost, the 85,000, some of it has now become a little bit of the cost of doing 36 as well. So, like I
Definitely.
mentioned before, right? As a property manager, we talk a lot.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Open communication, man. It's so critical. And I'm in the process of transitioning a couple of other properties over to us this week in
mhm.
anticipation of month end. And the communication, it's the number one reason of why I've been able to grow my business, is because people were just felt unheard, and that they didn't understand what was going on with their properties. And I'd rather be the guy that, okay, too much information than ever be the person where they're like, can you tell me what is going on? So um it's very rewarding as well to help yourself, for example, be able to decrease expenses the way we have, and increase them, and do it collaboratively while working on the project. So
And you may think, well, the tenants are going to object and everything. And yeah, sure, they may object, but we were very transparent from the get-go. Gave enough notice to all the tenants of what was going on. And we weren't really hiding anything. I mean, we weren't hiding anything. There was nothing to hide, right?
yep.
We document everything. The booking the contractors, giving the tenants enough notice, like we did as much as we could within our power, right?
Yep. Exactly.
And I think what happens is I think our reputation, like you have a reputation as a property manager now. We have tenants, you know, the more your reputation grows, word of mouth, I'm kind of hoping that, you know, when tenants leave, if somebody else is looking for a place, that they will actually say, hey, you should, I got a place available, you should go to this one, right?
Yep.
So there's all that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. In a nutshell. Anything you want to add, Anson?
Um, no, you know what I mean? It's obviously people watching this are going to probably be everywhere. Obviously understand the tenant relation laws and stuff in your own market, and understand what you can and can't do. And you know, just if you treat people with respect, to me, like you're gonna get respect back. And you know, planning and more planning, so that way again, you've really, you know, kept in mind as much as you can, because you can't plan for every single thing. But that way, whenever you start into a project, there's no huge surprises that completely throw wrenches into it. And just have fun. You know, if you don't get a good feeling with your contractor, they're probably not the right person to work with. You know, just
Yeah,
keep looking for someone that you connect with, so that way you can have open and frank conversations with them. And there's no offense, because they understand where you're coming from, and you understand where they're coming from.
absolutely. For me, on my side, as the person who was, you know, funding this, you know, it's my mindset, and don't be afraid to break the bank. I broke the bank. I had to, right? But I'm reaping the rewards now. Yes, you know, there's
Yep.
certain things like my, you know, my credit history took a kicking, but it's coming back in just after a month, right? So thank you very much,
Exactly.
Anson, for this. And enjoy your evening. And okay, we'll do next project, sir.
Yes, let's
All
go.
right. Have a good
All
night.
right. Talk to you.
Cheers.